So, thank you for having us. Lubomila, it's a pleasure to sit here with you today. So I've been following what you have been doing for the last years, and it was one of the goals to actually have you at the conference. So I hope everyone is as excited as we are. Oh yeah, okay, we hear the excitement. That is super nice. And actually to kick this off and to make sure that everyone is aware, on the one hand, what you are building as a founder and also what your company is about, it would be great if you would introduce yourself and your company in a few quick sentences.
Thank you so much for having me. Actually, I have been similarly following the work of your organization for a while, and I think what you're doing is fundamentally important for our community that still remains to be marginalized in a way. My name is Lubomila. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plan A. We're a software as a service platform that enables corporates and fast-scaling startups to decarbonize and improve their ESG performance. We use science and machine learning to be able to do so, and we really practically prescribe on how you can improve. It's not about offsetting, it's not about just simple small suggestion, it's really how do you transform your business. Also 2 years ago we founded a community called the Green Tech Alliance, where we focus on supporting businesses that are developing sustainable solutions to be able to scale, have access to capital and visibility. Essentially that's something that I spend most of my free time on, because it's really exciting to be able to support these kinds of companies.
It's crazy to hear that you actually have still free time and then it's connected to a company anyway, so that's what we hear a lot in our community, I have to say. And to make sure that also everyone is aware of how relevant your company already is, I want to share a few KPIs also with the audience. So you have more than 100 employees already. You have raised serious money from VCs, right now 17 million, if I remember correctly. You have offices all over Europe, and you're also working with clients from all over Europe. So which is something where I hope and think that many of our attendees are also going to be inspired by your story. And as we are seeing and hearing today, co-founder relationships are a very important topic to us because we think it's all about the people. We would be super interested to hearing a little bit more about how you met your co-founder Nathan, and what your crucial points with him in your relationship were in the last years.
Like in any founder relationship, there was a lot of serendipity in establishing this partnership. You really need to be able to trust the person on a practical level, maybe rational level, but also there is an emotional element to it. Nathan is a really good friend of one of my best friends from university, and a story that is very little told about how Plan A kicked off was this Facebook post after my serendipitous journey on a trip to Morocco, where I was learning to surf, still not a surfer, I can confirm that. But what ended up happening was that after 1 year of exciting learnings about climate change, I decided to take the leap, left my job, left London, also decided to kind of focus fully on building a company, and I set up a company in Berlin, so there was already an entity, but I needed people to support me. So I posted on Facebook at the time when we were still kind of actively focused on posting there and having a news feed and maybe even like photo albums or whatever. And I asked people if they were willing to support the project that I was kicking off, which at that time was a donation platform for environmental causes. Okay. Long way to go until where we are today, a B2B SaaS company with over 200 million CO2 emissions under management. And essentially what happened was that a lot of people responded. It turned out that actually people cared about climate change. And Nathan was one of those people that said, I'm happy to volunteer my time. I just left my previous job and I'll work for you and kind of with you. And we worked for a few months, and after that, like, the relationship really grew strong. I think one of the main learnings is, like, just don't commit immediately to a co-founder until you really don't get to know them on a personal level. You should be able to go for a dinner with them, for a coffee, have fun together, and kind of test the waters, maybe for also the challenging side of the story. And through these months of working together, I quickly learned that we would be really fitting partners, and I invited him to join me on building Plan A.
I love that story, to be honest. I mean, it's also nice to hear how these little moments in a founder's life can actually change so much, because I think there's also something good that we can learn from that. Not everything has to be planned and not everything has to follow a specific structure, which is also words of encouragement for everyone that is thinking about founding someone, founding something and finding someone, to be super precise about that, because it can happen at many places, maybe also at today's event, actually. Okay, wonderful. I mean, something that is obviously important for us in the community is the access to capital for gender diverse teams, as you have raised quite some money already. What was your experience in raising money specifically from VCs, and what were also the positive turning points in your conversations with VCs that enabled you then to get the big checks to build this huge and relevant company today?
I think it's relevant to mention which are the funds that are behind us, because then it can give context of also like what it is to be a female founder, but also a green tech founder. So we have SoftBank, HV Capital, Coparian, Keen Ventures, and we have around 10 unicorn founders that supported us over the last few months, essentially. And I must say the journey has not always been really prosperous, because we kind of pioneered the green tech space. I'm saying this with all my humbleness. It's more related to the idea that in 2016, 17, people didn't care about climate change. People also, I would say, were not particularly comfortable investing in women. We know the statistics now. They've gotten worse in the last few months, and this was even worse at that point. The key challenges that I have seen along the way have been, first of all, related to the fact that the climate topic was not necessarily well understood in the beginning. So it was essentially a bit of a, oh, you're building an NGO. And I'm like, no, it's a GmbH. No, it's an NGO. It's like, no, but today now we don't need to explain that. But at 2017, that was the case. Mm-hmm. The second challenge was related to the fact that there was no technical co-founder. So I come from business. I used to be in investment banking. My co-founder was in communication. So we were kind of this cute qualitative team that was able to tell stories, but maybe not giving the confidence that we would have the skin in the game, that would also be the type of activities and mindset and skills that would be needed to build up this complex science-based product. And the final bit, I think, that is a bit more specific also to the audience of this event, has been the fact that female founders were still kind of tested a lot more significantly before a commitment for the investment was made. I literally did an experiment with a friend of mine who was raising his seed to track on a sheet the amount of meetings I needed to go through with funds versus the amount of meetings that he needed to go through, until we both raised basically the equivalent amount of money. I had to do 3 times more meetings than him.
Wow. Okay.
Today is a bit different because Plan A has a name, I have a really big network, and also I'm supporting actively all the green tech founders and all the female founders that I mentor with my network. But the facts at that point were exactly like this. One other thing that I would like to add is the story of having also this idea that no business model that is not SaaS is really scalable. I think, we waited until we found this model that we have now, and I'm really happy that we didn't raise money for the first 2 years of the company. I put all my savings in the company, also got some friends, family, and fools kind of support. But I think that was something that continued and continues to be a big issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, thank you also for sharing actually that concrete number of the comparison with your friend. I'm already looking into the audience questions to make sure that we also cover that, but they are not appearing yet, so maybe the team wants to check on that. Luckily, I also have some questions at the back of my sheet here. And what I think is super interesting, and there are so many things where we overlap. I mean, our causes are very different, and at the same time, they somewhat align and overlap. So we've also heard the NGO argument in the past. I very much feel your experience there. And also looking at Plan A, and you're basically building a company at this intersection of climate, sustainability, and at the same time, definitely growth, as you're also going the growth route and taking in VC money. Do you feel that you are under specific scrutiny when you're being watched also in terms of how you build with your team values, how you hire and maybe fire people. What do you specifically look at when you look at your company growth and the impact that also your startup has on the world?
This is a fantastic question, and I think it is probably evident to you and to many people in the audience that when you align yourself to a certain cause or you commit to working and building a business model around certain values, you would be double-checked for the way you treat your employees, the way you also build the company with the growth. We've had quite an interesting set of situations in the team where people would... I'll just give one example. Last year for Pride, I suggested that we also contribute to the campaigning and we speak about this in our social media, and the team said we should only speak about this if we make a significant donation to a certain cause, because otherwise we're doing, value washing. We did that, and to basically be able to speak about it, not in the sense of build publicity around it, but because we donate money on a monthly basis. So in that particular moment, it was donated to the causes that the team selected, which allowed and aligned the whole team around feeling comfortable to speak about it. We have a very particular way of hiring people. It's a very communal process. The team is heavily involved, and we take a short amount of time, but it's quite intense because you end up speaking to quite a lot of people. We have people that are totally removed from the domain in which you come in for, but they check you for culture. And if we have one single no, that basically leads to a discussion within the team. It's not like, oh, if there's a majority, then the person gets hired. Internally, we have values related to being good people. It might sound like really qualitative, and probably someone would say in a cynical manner, this is not a growth startup mindset. The truth is that if you have happy employees, you end up really being able to deliver a lot more value for your customers, and also a lot more happiness for yourself because you sleep well at night. You know that you're not making anyone sad during the day. And the final bit is that we fight climate change with our product. Of course, the technical side of it is that we enable businesses to transform their business into a sustainable one, to embed KPIs related to ESG within their decision making. But there's a lot more to that, because in a similar way to you, you can't simply be selling this kind of value if you don't live it. We just released our impact report. We have a decarbonization strategy that is twice as fast as what our science-based targets say. We're the top 5% company, a B Corp. We have science-based targets ourselves. We're the only company in our industry, the domain of decarbonization that has that. And we also have the signees of the climate pledge. So we make sure that we walk the talk, and we also listen to our employees on what they want and how they feel about where we're headed.
Yeah, and that's super interesting to know, and I think it's very well reflected also in how your brand by now is perceived also by the broader community when it comes to climate tech and sustainability, because that's an investment where I would also agree totally pays off to make sure basically hiring is a priority, even though you are in a growth phase and probably super busy anyway with achieving all of the KPIs that you've committed to. I mean, how does this reflect then also in how you work with your clients? Are there any kind of brands or industries where you're super excited to add value to? Is there also clients where you're like a little bit more hesitant to collaborate? What's your strategy there?
We kicked off already in the beginning with the idea that we're going to be working only with businesses that really want to transform. Mm-hmm. We're not the company that offers carbon neutrality as a service or something that is like a label that you can put on the wall and then you focus on business as usual. For us, the focus is really on seeing the transformation of our economy and being at the forefront of this transition that isn't easy for businesses. And we really sympathize with them, which means that we don't scrutinize on the basis of industry, but rather on this mindset that we see is there for the shift to happen. We've had quite a few interesting situations. We work a lot with the finance industry, and let's be honest, there's a lot of work to be done, because for those of you of the audience that maybe don't know the concept of the GHG protocol, a finance industry is basically one of the most polluting industries, because they have within their scope 3, which is the peripheral activities, a lot of emissions related to the investments that they've made, which means that if you've invested in fossil fuel companies, most likely you're kind of incredibly polluting. So we have quite a lot of those. We have private equities, VCs, banks, and we don't judge them on what they've done in the past. It's more how they perceive themselves in the future. We have refused to work with a few companies because we've had fossil fuel companies come to us. So far, for those that have reached out to us, we've not seen the willingness to transform. Also, coal mining, that's kind of a no-go. Also, we've had some situations where money were offered to us for like nothing. They didn't even need it to wanted to use the software. We were like, that's not how it works. Okay. But we have a lot of excitement for many industries. Our product is modular, which means that we can allow for different industries to go quite deep without having the dependency to buy all the other things that are available for other companies. We have events modules, supplier modules, investment module. We have quite a lot of depth related to waste and so on. So you can kind of organize the product according to your particular needs. And if the willingness for transformation is there, we're going to be working with you.
Amazing. Okay, I hope that's some good news for everyone who thinks about working with Plan A already, because yeah, willingness to change and also like putting numbers behind that is something that we want to witness in many questions connected to the SDGs in general, I would say. So audience questions are also popping up now on my device here. One I think that is particularly interesting is, when was for you as a founder the moment when you realized that Plan A was going to happen and it was going to be successful? Because there is, in many cases, this long way that you're going with highs and lows. I can definitely share that we have seen lots of them. So how was that for you? Was there a specific situation that you can remember?
I think it kind of is a necessity when you're a founder to know that the company is going to happen before it has happened, because if you don't have the belief in yourself, probably no one else is going to believe in you. There's been a few milestones that really have been a trigger for me to start thinking that someone is recognizing that there's a big problem that we're solving and we have the chance to be a pioneer in the space. The first one was really kid-like experience where we won the pitch competition at Pirate Summit. Pirate Summit is a like really quirky pirate-like conference. Like it's literally with like pirate hats and eye patches and so on. We, out of the blue, I must say, out of like hundreds of startups that were pitching on the same day, got selected for the final 50, final 20, final 3, and then essentially we ended up winning. That was 2018, so 2 years down the line. Why this was important was because for the first time I saw a traditional VC crowd, because there's a lot of investors at this particular conference, to come and say, I see the business model, I see this making money. The second one was when we got our We Work Creator Award. It's another event where we won kind of for Europe the best startup award, and that was like the first time I spoke in front of 2,500 people. And now I've spoken to a lot more, and now I have the sensation that is a bit different to sizes of audiences. But why this was really insane was because it was a 1-minute pitch. That was the final one. So like we had been selected out of 5,000 startups and so on. But the final was when we were 20 startups and everyone had 1 minute to speak in front of 2,500 people, 3 people in the jury, and 10 minutes later they announced who won. And there was prize money. We flew to New York before the setup that WeWork has now, and so on. That was another huge milestone. And one that is continuous, that's the final one, is actually the people that are joining Plan A. That is something that is overwhelmingly clear across the journey, but I have now been on the road for 3 weeks, and that's probably the longest that I've been for a long time. And it has been really exhausting to go to the different conferences and so on. And last Friday, ask my team, my immediate team, my associate, also my assistant and chief of staff to get on a call like on the Friday evening, and I just realized how much I missed them, and I cried after the call because I was like, oh, I miss you. And essentially like that's the kind of validation that I get on a daily basis when I'm signing all the new contracts, when I interview every single person that joins the company. And that's something that I would highly recommend to any founder. There's many examples from San Francisco as well. Like always find at least 15 minutes. You need to show the commitment that you're making to these people, because someone else has already filtered whether they're good for the company. I'm not there to make the choice whether this person is good or not. So far, I vetoed only one single person. It was more like there was a lot of other people that vetoed them. But there's a really big necessity for you to demonstrate that you're going to be there and you're not someone that just shows up at conferences and kind of speaks, but you really are there to support the journey and kind of manage this whole growth that for many people could be quite uncomfortable.
Thank you for sharing that, and that also is already the closing point of our session. So thank you for being so candid and honest. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I hope it's also an inspiration to our final pitches today, because maybe this is then the pivotal moment for one of the startups that we are seeing here at the conference. So thank you, Lubomila. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.